And welcome everybody to the 11th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric J. Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, coming at you from the beautiful podcast studio here in Santa Ana. Although, PJ, I got to tell you, if you don't make some progress on this painting, we're going to have to move this podcast someplace else. I'm telling you right now.
I know. I've been slacking on that.
But look, guys, another incredibly huge couple of weeks here in TCPA world. We just did the 10th edition not long ago. A bunch of things were breaking down with the CFPB, with the FCC, with the FTC, and now here we are with the biggest news probably in the history of TCPA world, which is the FCC's new NPRM, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But before we get to that, our guest today, Deryck Richardson, the guy from Richardson Marketing Group who got Allstate into all that trouble in the Gebka case. You're going to hear his version of the story. You're going to hear how he lost $2.5 million in revenue, half his revenue, and had to lay off 12 people, 12 hardworking Americans from Columbus, Ohio, because of this serial litigator allegedly bringing this case. You're going to hear all about this. It's a really big deal. But before we get to any of that, why don't we introduce ourselves? Why don't we start with you, Pooja?
Hello, my name is Queenie. I am co-founder of Troutman Firm and partner of Troutman Amin.
That is a good point. Today, we are recording on International Women's Day. We just, speaking of big news, announced the huge news that Troutman Firm will soon become Troutman Amin LLP as of May 1st. That's official. Of course, the name Amin, that's Pooja's last name. Can we get like a round of applause?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's huge. It's well-deserved. It's well-earned. We weren't supposed to be talking about this right now. But nonetheless, congratulations. It's fantastic. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
To the right of Queenie, who do we have?
The Wizard of TCPAWorld. I run call centers and a direct mail warehouse, and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, direct marketing wizard, man. You are the man, PJ. Always love to have you. Your insights are perfect. I'm excited for what you've got for us today. Why don't we go over to you on the left?
My name is Tori Guidry. I am Dame of TCPA World. I'm an associate attorney over there at Troutman Firm.
Yeah, over there at Troutman Firm. The Dame, always looking fantastic. Right here is usually the Baroness, but we've lost the Baroness for the day, and I really am missing her. Although Tori's doing a great job. The Dame's doing a fantastic job filling in, but the Dame is sick today, so we were kind of like sad, long faces.
Baroness.
The Baroness, that's right. Sorry, the Dame is not sick. The Baroness is sick today. Thank you, Pooja. And last but not least, floating in the ether, far, far away, who are you?
I am the Duchess. I'm Angelica Munger, and I am the paralegal at the Troutman Firm, soon to be Troutman Amin Firm.
There you go. Nicely done. Okay, so introductions are out of the way. Let's dive right in. The FCC last week introduced their NPRM. That's a Notice of Proposed Rule Making that is going to potentially send shockwaves throughout the lead generation and performance marketing and digital advertising world. Just kind of getting to brass tacks, a think tank, kind of a left-leaning consumer company or group called Public Knowledge, the same Public Knowledge where Gigi Sohn was the founder. We're going to talk about her in a second. Submitted a comment to the commission back in December and said, you know what, commission, the lead generation world is so full of fraud, it's so full of abuses, it cannot be saved, and you should destroy it by saying that consent cannot be sold. A consent must be given directly to a provider of a good or a service. So if you are interested in a mortgage, you cannot go to lendingtree.com. You cannot go to an intermediary brokerage company where you might get comparison shopping. You have to go directly to the lender, Wells Fargo, Mutual of Omaha, Loan Depot, and provide that information directly on their website with no intermediaries. That, of course, would be a disaster for many, many segments of the economy. The entire, not the direct consumer marketers, they would have a whole huge challenge. They would lose a bunch of revenue, but they're not necessarily going to go out of business. The ones that would are the lead generators, the folks that are publishers that operate these websites, and the folks that are middlemen that provide a brokerage service connecting the publishers with the lead buyers, the offers of the goods and services that the consumers need and want. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who are at risk of losing their jobs right now, depending on the outcome of that FCC NPRM. The good news is that the NPRM seems to suggest that the FCC understands that there's value to comparison shopping. There's value that these lead generators and the digital marketers do provide in terms of the engagement and the information and the competition that they enable between goods and service providers that help to keep everybody's cost of goods and credit low. So they get it. They get it kind of, at a high level. But what is also clear from the FCC record, and it's just frankly clear from everything we know about the lead generation world, is that lead generators have not self-policed sufficiently to date. They simply have failed to do what is necessary to avoid abuses to consumers. We're talking about a fraud rate between 25 and 40%. I mean, 25 to 40% fraud in the lead generation space, that's just unacceptable, right? It wasn't going to be long before the regulator stepped in to do something about that. And then even where it is a legitimate lead, a lead might get sold 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100 times. There's no limits. There's no regulation that says how many times a lead can be sold or when or under what circumstances or to whom or for how long, right? There's no standards. There's no rules. And even when you talk about, the sufficiency of a lead form in the first instance, there are no standards in terms of how big the disclosure has to be, how it needs to be presented, how prominent it must be. Even the language it has to include is somewhat disputed right now. There is absolutely no standards, nothing clear that somebody operating in this industry can point to say, this is the law that I must follow. And so perhaps, these children who have been left unattended for so long will be forgiven for having both gotten into the cookie jar and turned on the microwave and spilled the water on the floor because they've taken liberties at every turn. And that's just reality. It's just reality. They've made the disclosures small and they put it below the button and they've created flows that kind of trick consumers into providing the consent in the first instance. That's not everybody. I'm talking about extreme cases here, but we see this. This happens, right? People that get these consents and the journalia looks valid because the language is all there, but you go through the flow and it's a multi-vertical website and they're there to look at a mortgage and now they're getting sold solar products, right? You see that sort of thing. Even if it's a perfectly legitimate lead, though, you see that lead get sold to 5 different aggregators who themselves will sell it 5 different times to different brokers who themselves will sell it to 5 different, maybe direct lead generators at that point who sell directly to a good or service provider. And these leads, they just get bounced around in the ether for 180 days. Many people mercifully will stop calling after 90 days, but that's not even necessarily baked. That's not even an industry standard in the true sense of the word. So the bottom line is the abuses out there in this industry are real. Even if these companies, most of them are actually abiding by the letter of the law because the law has been so lapsed, just so lacking in this industry that the standards that it needs had to come out beyond the law. And so it's somewhat ironic now that the FCC, the regulators are coming down and saying, well, we're going to put you out of business because you didn't, behave yourselves, even though there was never any law, there's no regulation, there's no standards that have been put on this industry to have them to have them guide themselves in accordance with reasoned principles. And so again, like kids left alone to cause a mess in a kitchen when the parents are away, they've caused a mess. And so now the regulators are coming in and potentially saying, well, we're going to put the kids up for adoption and get rid of them. And I'm like, that's not the right option. They need a stern talking to. They need to be told, don't go into the drawers and don't eat cookies when we're not around. But look, something really big is going to come out of this NPRM. Non-action, I don't think is an option. Although, as Queenie's about to tell us, there's been a change over at the commission, which might slow things down. But there's a ton of momentum around this, right? The commission now understands with the lead generation industry that they've got a huge hand, in my opinion, in the spamming of America that we've all been living through for the last few years. I certainly support clamping down on a large number of practices, and of course, in creating REACH and putting down the standards that REACH has proposed, which assures that consumers provide real, valid, transparent consent. They know exactly what's going to happen, like a Surgeon General warning on the cigarette package. They know exactly what's going to happen when they push that button. They know how many companies are going to call them. They're going to get a rough estimate as to how many calls there are going to be placed. They're going to know how long they're going to receive calls for. And you know what? If they don't want to receive calls, they can go to a different website and do something differently and govern themselves accordingly. But empowering consumers to understand and know that they're going to be receiving calls, right? That's the objective of Reach. I envision a world where every single call that's made from a business to a consumer is an expected call. That consumer knows that call is going to be made and hopefully wants that call to be made, right? Is looking forward to it so that we can stop the carrier blocking, which is unconstitutional. We can stop the labeling, which is probably defamation and also probably illegal. We can stop all of these kind of hideous things that we're allowing right now because we have to, because the robocall epidemic is so bad that we're willing to bend every law, we're willing to ignore the Constitution, we're willing to do everything that we have to do to stop robocalls, except what we should be doing, which is getting to the source and doing reasonable things in the industry that is, in my opinion, causing most of the problem. And again, the answer is not to kill the industry. It's not to put hundreds of thousands of people out of work in bulk. It's not to just, the unintended consequences of destroying the entire digital marketing architecture in this country. God knows where that leads. So that's not the answer, but letting things continue to be out of control the way they are now, that's not the answer either. So there's got to be something in between. And like I said, I'm thinking the Reach standards are the in between. But I don't know. I don't usually do this, but do you guys have any thoughts on this? I mean, this is a huge, huge deal. I don't think that people should just hear it from me. Pooja, Tori, PJ, what do you guys think?
Well, one thing I do agree with is there needs to be some change, right? It's either you guys are going to die with the FCC NPR ruling, or you're going to have to get together and accept some set of standards, whether that's the Reach standards, whether it's a step above the Reach standards, or even a little bit below. Either way, the FCC, in my opinion, is not going to take away their thoughts and take away, stop discussing this matter. They've been discussing this for, 2-3 years now? The FCC has been attacking the lead gen industry.
Actually, that's not true. That's the irony, is that the FCC really hadn't done much with the lead generation industry.
But they've been complaining about telemarketers and spam calls and robocalls.
And that's what's so interesting is that I feel like the commission and others have finally kind of opened the door and seen, right?
Where is it coming from?
Exactly. And man, it's a no mercy mentality right now.
They've been investigating, trying to figure out what is the root cause of this. And now bingo, right? It's a lead gen industry, right? So, I mean, you already ate the cookie, right? Now, how do you get your kid to go work out, right? So it's one of those situations. And so I think the lead gen industry, there's no more, hey, I'm going to file for bankruptcy and start a new company, or I'm, going to go work with a different buyer. There's no pivoting around not being compliant anymore.
Yeah, this is remarkable. Tori, you got anything on this? PJ, what are you guys thinking?
I just think it's important to reiterate of how many people are actually going to be affected by this, Thousands of people are going to 100,000 people possibly may even lose their jobs over this without even considering, a reasonable alternative.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a massive deal. And it's funny because when I put up, I did a blog the day the NPRM came out. I was critical of the idea of shutting down the industry. I'm going to tell you, that blog hit got over 20,000 views. It was really, really well viewed. And I got a ton of comments. I'm going to tell you, these comments were not very nice. Mm-mm. I mean, they were not very nice. They were like, die in the fire, Czar, you're terrible. And, people really are animated and want robocalls to stop. And they view anybody that they view as even potentially, supporting those things as just being a terrible, vile person, which I don't think I am. But, at the end of the day, the climate out there is crazy. And now I feel like Atticus and To Kill a Mockingbird, like trying to prevent a lynching. The folks are out there with the forks and with the pitchforks and the torches, and man, they're going to come to town and just burn the lead generation industry down unless we give them a good reason not to. And again, Reach is out there doing everything it can to try to protect the industry, at least the good players in the industry. I was telling the other day, it kind of reminds me of that biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot was told, hey, look, go find 100 people that are righteous in this town and I'll spare the town. And then he came back and was like, well, how about 50? Okay. He came back and said, okay, well, how about 25? Okay. And at the end of the day, it came down to, if you can find one virtuous player in this, in this industry or in this city, I won't destroy it. So hopefully we can show the commission that there are good people here. Don't destroy the entire city, at least for the sake of one or two or 10 or hundreds of good companies, which I know there are there. But these companies have to come to bat, man.
Yeah.
They have to come to bat. They have to bring comments. They have to be active in this proceeding. If they are not, I guarantee you the consumer bar will be active. The NCLC will be active. Public knowledge will be active. They will be filling the docket with horror stories. And there are plenty of horror stories of people who have been abused by, frankly, companies that were not doing the right thing. And those are the stories that they're going to hear. So if you're a company that does the right thing, you better tell your story too. Because if this is one-sided, I'm telling you right now, you're going to get shellacked. It is not going to be good. All right, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to pivot off of that. There's lots of other news to cover. We did a huge presentation. It's on our YouTube channel. You can take a look at it. It was an hour long with Isaac over at the Contact Center Compliance, the DNC.com guys. If you want more information about this, watch that website, watch that video. Obviously, check out TCPA World. We've got lots of content on it. All right, we're going to throw it around now because we just can't spend so much of our podcast talking about one topic. We have so much else to cover. It's freaking crazy. Angelica, what do we got?
Yeah, so today I posted a blog actually that I was kind of like a little shocked at the details, or maybe a little bit more sympathetic to the plaintiff, where it was an employee that received a company credit card, and upon their departure, they returned the credit card back over to the company. And, it was approximately 3 years later, they start receiving, I believe it was like pre-recorded messages letting them know that their card is not being paid. And this went on for a few years. She calls up American Express and she says, hey, I am no longer employed there. This is not my personal card, to no avail. And so she filed a TCPA lawsuit. And the interesting thing is that the arbitration agreement actually came into play, even though the person had never reviewed the terms or even agreed to the terms, because it was a company card. There's this little disclaimer on the back that says use of this card is subject to the card member agreement. And that was enough for the courts to also find that was a valid arbitration provision. And so her claims didn't fall outside of that.
Yeah, the card issuers in this country have been very, very successful upholding that little thing. But you know what? The banks have been too. And at least in the card issue, circumstance, you actually have the card in your hand. You can see that little disclosure there. But in the banking context, right, when you sign the signature card, it says the same thing. By using this bank account, you agree. And the courts will also uphold even the signature card signature, even if you signed it, 10 years before and the change in terms took place 5 years after, and you got notified in an email that you didn't read. The courts are pretty good about enforcing arbitration. So interesting, sympathetic story from a plaintiff. You don't see that very often, but it was enforced. And I think overall that's a good thing for TCPA World. You want to see these arbitration clauses get enforced. It is an interesting fact pattern where, of course, this plaintiff never even saw the terms to begin with. But I guess, look, all of you who have corporate cards, you should be asking your employer, hey, give me those terms and conditions so I can see what's happening when I use this card. Really good stuff, Duchess. You are fantastic. Hey, did you hear that the CFPB, the United States Supreme Court, has accepted cert to look at the illegal funding of the CFPB to see if the CFPB is really dead or not? Did you hear about that? Isn't that amazing?
Didn't the Sicilian break it down?
No, so it's been broken down in TCPA World. Yet another amazing story. Like, this is how fast things move, right, in TCPA World. The CFPB, major, obviously, regulator of banks. We've talked about this, right? They just issued that anti-steering TCPA rule. I told you, how can they do that? Because they're dead. And then literally the Supreme Court, like 2 days later, grants cert to determine whether or not they're actually dead or not. Huge gamble by the Biden administration. I think this is a bad move. I think the Supreme Court is going to uphold the Fifth Circuit's determination that the CFPB is in fact unconstitutionally funded under the Appropriations Clause of the United States Constitution. I think the CFPB is going down. I really do believe that. And that's happening right now. So much news in TCPA World. Pooja, you've got another big story, massive story. We've kind of flirted with it, but let's go ahead and take it to the dinner now.
Yeah, so as most of you may know, the FCC is typically made up of 5 members. Since Biden's administration, it has been at deadlock with 4 members, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Gigi Sohn, who the Dame previously reported back a few months ago, I believe, she's in the news a lot for many reasons. Her position she was nominated almost a year and a half ago, approximately. Her position has been deadlock because folks just can't agree on whether to allow her to take up that 5th seat. Was it yesterday? I can't keep track of my time, but just yesterday she stepped down. She has stepped down, so that 5th seat still remains vacant. Gigi Sohn, as Eric mentioned just previously, is the founder of Public Knowledge. She's a Georgetown law fellow, and she is known to be an expert in the privacy tech space. So what does this mean for all of us, right? Well, what it means is that the FCC continues to not remain at full strength, right? So for them to be able to effectuate on their policies and whatnot, it just makes it more difficult for them to proceed. Maybe good news for the NPRM, maybe stalling that out a little bit. So it might be good for the lead generation industry, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, so let's look at the timing here real quick, right? So Biden comes into office November 2020. He becomes president officially January, right, 2021. And the nomination of Gigi Sohn took place 7 months later. So it took for 7 months, there was no 5th commissioner that was even identified because the president has to recommend to the Senate who that commissioner is going to be. So Biden took 7 months before he even made a nominee. When he did, he picked Gigi Sohn. I was on stage in December of 2021 at the TCPA summit. I told everybody, guys, I got a bunch of birdies singing to me, and they say it's not going to happen for Gigi Sohn. And this is back in October 2021. I said right out of the gate, this was an interesting pick. I'm hearing it's not going to happen. Now, things changed a little bit in the midterms because, I think unexpectedly the senators, the Democrats picked up a seat in the Senate. And so I kind of went quiet because now all of a sudden, maybe, right? It looked like it was never going to happen. It might be DOA. And now maybe there was a chance. But you saw the Republicans were so aggressive because Gigi was really viewed as a partisan. And look, the FCC has become increasingly political. That's just a fact. But when Joe Manchin, the quasi-Democrat out of West Virginia, the senator, tweeted, just 2 days ago that he was not going to support Gigi was done. There was no path forward for her, and so she stepped down to let Biden select a different nominee. By the way, Joe, hey, here I am. Okay, look, I know I'm not the traditional kind of left-leaning, consumer-friendly guy, but I'm also not a crazy right-wing zealot. Like I'm a centrist guy. I know everything there is to know about telecom law in this country. I know a ton about the TCPA. I understand policy. I'm a bright guy. People like me. Plus, I got that brown skin, so you know what I'm saying. If this could work, buddy, give me a call.
Are you a Democrat or Republican?
Call me. You know I don't answer those questions. Okay, so thank you very much, Pooja. I appreciate that. Really good breakdown. Tori, have we talked to you yet? I don't think we have. What do you got?
Yet. So it's a little bit older of news, but we didn't cover it last time in the last podcast.
Old news is still news, I guess.
As long as it's good news.
It's good news. It's good news. So we have a decision that came out of Texas saying that an offer to buy is not a solicitation.
Oh, I know this case.
Yeah.
This is Tori. Oh, okay, I get it. Because the Baroness gets so much love when she wins, and Tori had a big win, and we gave her no love. She's the redheaded stepchild. You see how this works? You see how this
I'm
works?
going to talk about my win here.
There you go.
Go ahead, Tori. Sorry.
So they decided that because there was no fee in exchange for what the supposed service being alleged here was, it did not fit in under the TCPA. It was not a solicitation. It was not telemarketing, and that was a big win for the company. And I think the right decision and a well-deserved win.
Well, it's actually a first in the nation victory, not because an offer to sell doesn't constitute, or sorry, an offer to buy doesn't constitute a solicitation. That's not new. But the context here was that the offer, the text messages were being sent so that a third party, as part of a lead gen effort, could potentially buy the house. And that is new. So the holding was even in the context of lead generation, where the text message is sent to offer to buy, specifically to find out who wants to sell their house so they could then sell for a profit to a third party the ability to purchase that house. Even in that context, because there was no offer to have the consumer rent or buy a good or service, it still was not a solicitation, and the messages still do not trigger the DNC rules. And it's interesting because under the NPRM, of course, it will now be a question as to whether or not text messages are even subject to the DNC protections to begin with, because the FCC has said, look, we never said they were, guys. You know, a bunch of courts are running around out there holding, oh, the FCC has said, and the FCC just came out and said, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. So the courts have gotten it wrong. And so that's really interesting to see in maybe Pepper Part 2, whether or not the court finds that, you know what, text messages aren't subject to DNC protections to begin with because the FCC has said so. Really interesting stuff.
Great win, Dame.
Good
Great
job,
win.
Dame. Dame, you're fantastic. I don't miss the Baroness anymore at all.
Thank you.
All right, let's throw it over to you, PJ. What you got?
I got the state of Georgia is proposing changes to its Do Not Call Act.
Yeah.
Another state law?
Another state one. It has currently passed the Senate and it's at the House. And they are proposing a $1,000 fine. And this is very interesting for vicarious liability. It actually encourages class actions. And they're trying to get the seller and the administrator or whatever party is involved in the chain.
Yeah, this is one of those where even if you're not the caller, even if you don't know you did anything wrong or the caller was doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be potentially liable. Although there is like a defense for a policy, I think.
They took that out. That's in the last year's, yes. So last year they proposed a very similar bill, which didn't get passed. The one that just came out that PJ is covering, they scratched that portion out, and they scratched off every portion that says the word knowingly. So...
Interesting.
Very interesting.
There's so much going on, you guys, in TCPA world. I think we need to have a segment in the podcast every week now, or every 2 weeks, or monthly, whenever we do this, where we talk about state law stuff. Because we've got Georgia, we've got Maryland, we've got Michigan, which hasn't passed yet, which is interesting.
Yeah. New York.
And it's almost the end of the first quarter. I predicted first quarter, so we're on the clock. Might the Czar be wrong about one of his predictions? Ooh, we're going to find out. Yeah, we've got New York. That just, March 6th was that big D-Day.
That was just a few days ago.
My goodness, man. Things are just flying here. But anyway, look, we got to keep this tight because we've got to get to a fantastic interview, and we're going to get there right now through the power of the Troutman Firm. And now, through the power of the Troutman Firm, I'm excited to bring you the story of a small business owner who's been really impacted by a TCPA suit involving Allstate, Deryck Richardson of Richardson Marketing Group. Deryck, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, for sure.
Absolutely. Let's give just the listeners a little bit of background on yourself and Richardson Marketing and kind of what you do and how long you've been in business.
Yeah, man. So I am a lead veteran from the sales side of things. So just started in my garage. Just said, hey, I'm going to be a broker. I'm going to broker some leads. 2016, I got an office. By 2018, we were a couple $1 million business and had 18 employees. Proud to be a 3-time best place to work in Columbus, Ohio, so treating the employees right. And proud to be a 2-time Fast 50 company in Columbus, Ohio also, which recognizes the fastest growing privately held companies in the region. So we were number 6 in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, and then back-to-back number 15 in 2021 at the end of a pandemic. So still growing heavily and doing the right thing with best places to work and Fast 50 recognitions, and just a lead broker. I'm not a tech guy, I'm a sales guy, right? So I can hire people, train them how to sell leads, because I've been selling leads now for over a decade at this point. And we were just brokering leads, man.
Well, look, first of all, respect for starting your own company, doing it right, treating people right. We were talking earlier, Pooja today just was elevated to named partner at what was currently Troutman Firm, and will become Troutman Amin LLP, because I believe in treating people right too. So I love to hear that, man. I love to hear that. I'm going to talk with you at the end of the interview a little bit about the FCC's NPRM and how it's going to impact a small business like yours that treats people right and really is a best place to work in Ohio. And because I want people in the community to understand the impact that FCC action might have on good small businesses like yours. But before we get to that, I want to talk about why I brought you on. which is you've got a really funny connection with this big Allstate settlement that recently came down. And rather than me tell the story, why don't you just kind of explain, your initial role? Don't go too deep into the case. Just kind of explain what happened at the beginning and how it turned into a large case.
Sure. So, obviously everybody knows that there's serial litigators out there. In my eyes, for a small business doing it the right way, I think those guys are bullies. I think that they're using the law to bully small companies who employ, again, at that time, 18 people who put food on the table, who are paying mortgages and rents for, at least a small sector here in Columbus, Ohio. And, you get these demand letters and the attorneys just recommend, hey, man, it's going to cost you more to fight it than just to pay the $1,000 or the $1,500 that these guys are asking for. In 2019, I just got tired of it, man. And I said, you know what? No, I'm not going to let these guys just continue to bully me into giving them $1,000 just because we made a phone call, or just because the phone call led back to us. We sold the call to insurance agents. Again, at that time, we were rapidly growing. So, we were in the midst of doing some really, really big things. And I was just tired of being bullied. I've never been bullied my entire life. So, got a demand letter. I said no. And the guy said, well, we'll take it all the way. And I said, let's go. And that's how it started.
All right. Well, looking back on all that, do you wish you just paid him the $1,000?
You want the true story?
I want the truth. Of course. That's what we're here for, man.
The truth is today, yes. If I would have done it again, knowing what I knew at the same time, I would have done it again the same exact way.
Okay.
But there has been a major impact to my business. We are certainly still in business. So when you introduced us, you said, what was the firm you used to have? No, I still have it. We're still in business, but we certainly have been affected. We've been put on, some blacklists because we're associated with this lawsuit, including Allstate, which at the time was our number one client, your Allstate retail agent, and State Farm, though we never had any sort of legal issues with State Farm, was our second largest client at the time, because of the word that we were associated with this thing also put us on a blacklist. So 2022 was the first year that we did not double our revenue. And in fact, we lost 50% of our revenue in 2022 versus 2021. And so 2022 was certainly a tough year for us.
And to be clear, Derek, you lost 50% of your income in 2022 specifically because of the ramifications of this TCPA case. Is that right?
100% specifically because of the ramifications of this lawsuit. Yes.
So this is what I want people to understand, right? This is why you're here, is to talk about the incredible impact that these cases have.
Yeah. So, if you ask me right now, the answer is, yes, I wish I would have paid him I think the demand was for $1,500. I wish I would have paid him $1,500, but I promise you this, if you ask me in a year, I may have a different answer, because again, we're not going anywhere. And you certainly learn from lessons like this, and you keep on going and you keep your chin up and you keep fighting. So though we may be down right now, I doubt that we'll be down in a year from now. So ask me again, I may have a different answer.
I like that mentality, but let's unpackage this a little bit more, because I want the listeners to really kind of understand what happened here. So Richardson Marketing, which was your company, you were retained by a captive Allstate, an independent captive Allstate agent. Is that right? Like, tell me just kind of what that relationship looked like. Who was the guy? What was the deal? What were you selling? How did it work?
Yeah. So at the time, that's our motto. We don't go to sort of the head of the fish. We go to retail agents. So Mike Smith, State Farm, right? Donna Johnson, Allstate. Like, we're going to the Allstate agency owner saying, hey, what are you doing for marketing? We have a better program. We have a cheaper program. Let's increase your ROI. Let's lower your cost per acquisition. That's our motto. That's what we do. So at the time we had, I think, over 1,700 total clients that were buying leads from us on a daily basis. The particular lead that we were selling that got us in trouble was a live transfer. So obviously you guys probably know the difference in an inbound call versus a live transfer. We are buying data, old data from publishers that has, obviously opt-in, legal opt-in, Janaya, or trusted form. We're sending that data to an overseas call center. The call center is then rewarming up that data. Hey, it looks like 90 days ago you were looking for insurance. Did you ever get that taken care of? If they say no, awesome, we'd love to transfer you over to an agent that can give you a quote right now. And then we would live transfer that call over to our clients who are the agents who are buying the leads from us. So that was the product that we were selling. Again, the serial litigator was on the end of the call. He said yes. He agreed to be transferred. He gave his information to the Allstate agency, the savings agency in Illinois. And essentially what happened was he then went to work with all the loopholes that you can go through when you're trying to sue a company for millions.
All right, so let's kind of, again, just so that everyone understands, because most people get this, right? But some of my listeners are still kind of like, we don't understand exactly what happened here. So a small kind of mom and pop independent broker. Caused all this trouble. Who'd you get that from?
So that exact piece of data, what I would prefer probably not to say where it came from, but it came from certainly a reputable data company. We had tons of sources, still have tons of sources where we are buying this data from. So
okay, so we won't out them. We won't out them. But so you go to a reputable company. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But yes, they are a publisher. So they are the ones with the website that's actually promoting the website and collecting the data. They're selling it in real time. We come back 30 days later and say, hey, cool, you already sold it, 3, 4, 5 times. Let us get it at a discount as an aged lead, 30 to 60 days old, and let us go to work with that product. So this was a publisher that has the websites. Again, I don't have the websites. I'm a broker. I bought their old data that's 30 days old. I then compiled a list in the area of the agent that was looking for prospects, sent that list over to the call center and said, hey guys, go get some transfers off of this.
And when you bought the data, though, the data company, whoever it was, the publishers, the aggregator, whoever you bought it from, they told you these are consented opt-in leads, right?
Not only do they tell us, we verify with Janaya and or Trusted Forum. So yes.
Contract. I mean, I just want the audience to understand, like, you weren't just going off buying bad data from some clown someplace and then putting on a dialer in Pakistan. Like, that's not what you were doing. That's what some people are going to be hearing right now, and they're going to be thinking, "Oh, cry me a river, buddy." But that's not what happened. What happened was you were trying to help a small company. You're a small company. You probably bought data from another small company. You don't want to identify them. That's fine. They told you this is good, clean data. You can rely on this. Backed by Janaya Trusted Forum. You send it off to a call center. Now, look, I'm going to tell you, between me and you, I don't love the offshore call centers, right? I think those guys are, just my opinion, by and large, they're troublemakers. But that's not what mattered here anyway, right? Because this guy claimed he never provided consent in the first instance, I assume.
And that's not what he claimed. What he claimed was he actually opted in and then opted back out. So he knew the game, right? So he opts into a website. We have the valid Janaya. Remember, this is a valid opt-in consent. What he claimed was he then went to the source and opted out. What that source should have done is then relayed that message to anybody who purchased that data from them.
That's right. So this was a DNC case. That's right. Sorry, keep going.
So what happened was not only was the claim that he had opted out, that he had said, no, don't call me anymore, to the source. He knows the game. That source not only sold that data to me, but probably sold that data in real time again to 3 to 5 agents who are buying a real-time lead or a lead that's within 24 hours old, and then probably selling that data to a couple other companies that are just like me that buy old data. So he knows that his data has been dispersed 25 times or whatever. He goes to the original source that says, hey, I'm done, unsubscribe, opt out, right? But his data has already been dispersed everywhere, so guys like me don't know that he has opted out of that.
Now, did he opt out also to you or to the company that you were working with, the local Allstate broker that you sold the warrant transfer to? Did he opt out to that guy also?
He opted out to neither.
Yeah, so that's what's fascinating about the case. He didn't opt out to you or to the actual broker that was making the call, or the agent that was making the calls.
Not only did he not opt out to the agent who was making the call, he entertained the conversation. He entertained the quote. He said, "Hey man, call me back when you let me know what you could do." He entertained the entire conversation. So not only does he say yes, not only does he opt in, he says, "Yes, I want to be transferred." Guy picks up the phone, local Allstate agency, starts to gather information. Guy says, "Hey man, call me back. I'm busy." Allstate agent calls back to gather more information that was not captured in the original conversation. He entertains the quote. He gets a quote.
And you wouldn't have any idea that so I'm just trying to understand the timing, because if the original source of the lead was told, "Don't call me," before they sold you the lead, well, that's bad on them. If they sold you the lead and then you transferred to the call center, then the original person was told, "Don't call," but it was too late because it's in the universe and calls are being made, then, I mean, what do you do with that, right? I mean, the guy failed to opt out to the company that's making the calls that he needs to opt out to. So to me, that's a terrible legal position that plaintiff is in, but apparently it was good enough to beat Allstate, because what ended up happening, as we kind of walk through the steps here, is the plaintiff sues. He doesn't sue you, or it doesn't just sue you.
Right, correct. He does not just.
Yeah, but were you named? Was Richardson Marketing named in the suit?
Deryck Richardson personally was named in the suit. Richardson Marketing Group was named in the suit. The Savings Insurance Agency was named in the suit. Brian Savings himself was named in the suit. And Allstate Corporate was named in the suit. There were 5 people named in the suit in the beginning.
Did you make any calls? Did Richardson Marketing make a single call itself? Yeah,
no.
You didn't even make any calls and you got sued. But I mean, I presume the call center was working for you and that was their theory against you. Okay.
Correct. So that's neither there, because they were certainly retained by me to make calls on our behalf. But
all right. So the calls at issue were made by a call center that was offshore that you retained to generate leads. And were the leads that you were generating, were those exclusive to this Allstate captive guy, or could that have been sold to other places?
The call itself was exclusive. So to get a little bit into the weeds, we also sell aged data. So the list that we sent to the call center to generate live transfers, we would not then take, if we transfer John Smith to the savings agency, we are not then taking the list of transfers that we have transferred and selling aged transfers, but the original list that we bought with John Smith's name on it, yes, we will sell that list up to 3 times.
So through all of these machinations, right, it had to go through the original data seller, through Richardson Marketing, through a call center offshore, to the local Allstate agent, and then finally all the way up to Allstate. Obviously, corporate Allstate had no idea what you were doing, right? No clue. Correct. No clue at all. Obviously, didn't know you were buying data, who you're buying data from. They're over there with blindfolds on, and I'm not saying they're being willfully blind. They just had no idea. I assume they had not the slightest clue. But what ended up happening?
I don't know that piece is necessarily correct, because we were working on becoming an authorized dealer with Allstate.
Oh.
So one of the reasons why they had some bait was because there was correspondence that was subpoenaed between myself personally, Deryck Richardson, as the president and CEO of Richardson Marketing Group, and Allstate's marketing manager, asking us how we were generating leads, doing their due diligence to make sure that they could then promote, hey, yes, you can use Richardson Marketing Group. So Allstate Corporate certainly knew who we were. We were in the middle of becoming an approved vendor with Allstate. We had several conference calls with Allstate's marketing department, again, explaining how we're generating leads and why we are soliciting their agents. So to say that they didn't know anything about us, I don't know that that's 100%.
Well, that's
accurate.
Interesting. Well, this gets even more fascinating. So they were vetting you, they were kicking tires, but Allstate Corporate had not retained you.
That is correct. We were not an authorized vendor at that time.
And did they know specifically that the agent that you were working with was using you? Did they have any idea?
Yes, they would have. They would have known of at least 30 of the agents that are working with us, because we were all on a conference call and they were basically saying how much they loved our leads. So and this agent was one of the ones that went to bat for us to say, hey man, these leads are great. We should certainly consider putting them on our authorized.
So I'm starting to see how this case developed then. So there's some lessons here, for a lot of these big enterprises that work with, captive agents, both in the insurance context or maybe in the real estate context. If you're if you're vetting a company that's already being utilized, maybe the argument is that that's essentially ratification or like an implied consent to keep using them. That's really fascinating. It's really interesting. I didn't know these facts, so I appreciate you sharing all of these things. So in the end, because of apparently one call that the guy pretended he was interested in the product and it gets kind of sold through. What ended up happening in the case, man?
So our piece of it was dismissed. They tried to turn this thing into a class action lawsuit. I essentially, again, I went into this thing saying I wasn't going to be bullied, right? So I had already opened up another LLC. One of the reasons why I keep reiterating that Richardson Marketing Group is still in business is because that's important to me. Because I had already opened up another LLC. But in 3 minutes, we could have been a different company if they would have just came down and said Richardson Marketing Group was guilty, right? So I'm like, cool, fine, whatever. We owe the money. I don't have $5 million to give you. So cool, slap a judgment on Richardson Marketing Group. We'll be another business in 3 minutes. We'll be up and running. We'll be fine, right? We're going to play the business move. I told the magistrate that. The magistrate essentially said, hey, it's a little more serious than that when it comes down to TCPA because you are personally liable. And I told her same thing, like, listen, you're not going to get a dime out of me. So I'm going to have this guy waste his money on his attorney fees, right? And you're not going to get a dime out of me. So what's going to happen is, fine, put it on me. I'll file bankruptcy. I'll open it up in a buddy's name. Like, we're not going anywhere. Like, you can't knock us down, right? And you can't get any money out of us. So essentially what happened was the magistrate basically gave the plaintiffs time to find enough people to complain to turn it into a class action lawsuit. They failed to do so in the time being. They subpoenaed all of our records. They filed. So this, again, is being handled out of Illinois. They actually filed some sort of motion in Southern District of Ohio, where I'm at. Basically said I had to give all my records up. We did that. We gave up all of our records. They then tried to actively find people who we had called who would want to complain on us. They couldn't come up with that amount, and so the judge ultimately dismissed our piece of the claim because they didn't have enough people to say, I was violated because they called us. They couldn't do that because we were calling off of people who had opted in for consent.
But the case ended up settling, did it not?
Allstate Corporate ended up settling. Richardson Marketing Group's piece was dismissed.
How much did Allstate settle for?
$4 million.
So, and it ended up being. Do you remember how many people were in the class that was certified?
I don't.
Yeah, so it was a pretty. I'll just put it this way: it was a pretty small number. It was a very, very expensive settlement on a per number basis or per class member basis. So Richardson Marketing Group might have walked away okay, at least from the lawsuit, although if we're going to talk about there were some ramifications here. But Allstate certainly did not. I mean, they definitely, I'm not going to say they got crushed because $4 million, they're going to be able to absorb that. But on a per class member basis, it was really a very tough settlement. And they've got other litigation, of course, that's ongoing as well. And I should pause and just tell the viewers, look, Derek's giving his lay person opinion of what he believes happened in the case. That does not mean that he's stating anything correctly or incorrectly. The docket, which is public, will tell you a lot more information about what took place if you're curious. We are not validating or agreeing factually with anything he's saying because truthfully, I don't know. I haven't gone and studied the docket. I can't tell you what happened. I just wanted to talk to the guy that was, the person that essentially created the big Allstate GEPCA settlement. I mean, I think this is a really interesting background that you bring to the table. Do you feel when you were kind of telling them, look, man, I'm not going to, you're not going to get anything out of us. I mean, do you feel a sense that you didn't do anything wrong and that's why you weren't willing to pay? I mean, if you felt like you had done something wrong, would you have a more of a sense of responsibility? There's gonna be some people that listen to this and they're like, oh, look at these marketers, they think they can just disappear, declare bankruptcy, start a new company and avoid the responsibility of violating the law. What would you say to somebody that feels that way?
And again, that's why I'm so strong on saying that we're still in business, right? And my name is on the door. Richardson Marketing Group. My name is Derek Richardson, because we didn't do anything wrong. If I would have done something wrong, I certainly would have said, "Hey, man, sorry about that. Here, what do I owe you?" But we did nothing wrong, and that's why we didn't change the name of the company, because RMG, Richardson Marketing Group, did nothing wrong. which is why it was dismissed. They couldn't find enough people to even entertain the fact that Richardson Marketing Group did something wrong. In my opinion, and I'll use the same disclaimer you just did as a lawyer, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm a sales guy and a CEO. In my opinion, Allstate settled for no reason. I don't know why they settled. Maybe they were just tired of fighting it. Maybe they just wanted to get these guys out of their hair. But in my opinion, if they would have went the entire distance, they also would have been dismissed from any liability.
Well, look, anyone from Allstate Corporate that happens to be listening, we've got some friends over there, don't we? If you want to come onto the podcast and tell your side of the story, we'd be happy to have you on. I think Derek is saying some interesting things. In fact, it's about to get even more interesting. Derek, you came to my attention, in fact, because you received a call that you thought was very interesting, and you reached out to me about it. Why don't you tell everyone about that?
Yeah, so I get telemarketing calls every day, as everybody does. I get a call. Of course, I'm in this business, so I understand the pop in my ear means it's a dialer. I certainly understand dialect, and I understand that these guys are in Pakistan, and they're soliciting me for auto insurance. The funny thing was, he said he was with Allstate Insurance. I said, which Allstate Insurance? He said, we're just with Allstate Insurance. He went through a script that's a very similar script to what my guys would use. He double verified, meaning he sent that call over to a supervisor that's also in Pakistan. And that supervisor confirmed my interest and then transferred me to an Allstate agency out of Indiana. I thought it was very funny that Allstate that just paid this settlement 6-7 months ago. It hasn't been that long. Is still using overseas call centers in the manner that we were using it. I just thought that it was ironic that they called me out of anybody.
So are you interested in being a plaintiff and suing in a TCPA class action, Derek? I'm kidding. That's a joke.
What's funny, man? You know what's really funny? We just talked about doing the right thing. I told my wife, I said, sweetie, I said, here's what I want to do. Allstate caused me a lot of problems by settling. They added me to the blacklist. State Farm got wind, added me to the blacklist. We've lost $2.5 million of revenue specifically because of this, which is a lot for us. I mean, we're not a major company, but $2.5 million is a lot for us, for a small business. We have simply gone through the mud since this thing has happened. I said, I would love to send these guys a demand letter and say, hey, listen, pay me what at least make me whole from what you guys did by settling. Because you have to remember, we were on the same team in the beginning. We were all, in this lawsuit, right? We were all defendants in this lawsuit. So we were all on the same team. Our attorneys were all working together. And then they just sort of threw me under the bus, kind of flicked me away as if I'm just some small mom and pop. At the end of the day, my wife said, but that's not the right thing to do. You complained for 2 years over serial litigators. You complain that these guys are just bullies who are looking for money in an unethical way. Do you really want to sell out and do that? And at the end of the day, my decision has changed since last week when we spoke. I don't think I'm going to cause any sort of lawsuit or demand letter towards Allstate.
Now, do you think Allstate mistreated you?
I think that they certainly flicked me aside like a pawn. Mistreated is relative, right? I mean, certainly, again, we didn't do anything wrong, and we know that we didn't do anything wrong. They know that we didn't do anything wrong. Then to settle and then to kind of throw our name in the mud as if we settled well because we got this bogus lead from Richardson Marketing Group. I think they didn't tell the accurate story, and I think because of that, they kind of flicked us away and said, okay, guys, get out of here. We'll just settle. We'll take care of it. Screw RMG. Did they maliciously come after me and attack me? No. But did they handle this thing like two men shaking hands and looking each other in the eye? No. They handled it as if they're this big conglomerate and I'm this small nobody, and whatever happens to me happens to me. And again, the way that I was raised, you just don't do that. I don't care who you are.
Well, that's unfortunate. Let's circle back to the call though, because I'm curious. That's what brought you here onto the show. Do you? So I mean, first of all, we don't know. I mean, just because a Pakistan call center said they're Allstate and then passed it on to an Allstate agent, I suppose that doesn't necessarily mean that the Allstate agent retained them, purchased it, or that anyone at Allstate knew that this was happening. But I mean, what's your sense? Do you have an idea? I mean, I guess it's speculation I'm asking you to do, but do you have an idea of like Allstate corporate is still is aware of this and is working with people that have replaced you essentially, and those parties are using offshore call centers? Do you think there's like a local agent that was using the offshore call center, or do you think maybe the call center is just lying?
No, the Allstate, the call center certainly was lying. That's a practice that happens in this business. Does the local Allstate agent know that? I don't know. Does Allstate corporate know that? I would imagine that Allstate corporate has put in multiple efforts to tell their agents not to use this type of marketing. I don't know that Allstate has turned their eyes to what's happening. I think they probably are doing an active effort to make sure that agency owners are not using these type of services. I think that this agency owner probably got a phone call and was sold, similar to my sales guys calling other Allstate agencies and saying, hey, listen, man, I know these other guys are out here charging you $75 for a call. I can get them to you for 40. You want to save some money and let's do business. And I think that's probably what happened. It's one of the reasons why I don't want to bring this thing to any sort of major fireworks, because that local Allstate agency, just like I'm a small business, is also a small business. Just like I employ people, also employs people. The gentleman I talked to was not the Allstate agency owner. He was an employee of that Allstate agency. And to bring this to light in a spiteful manner, not because I was hurt, not because I in any way did I feel violated, it would just be out of spite, could possibly put a small business out of business and put some employees out on the streets. And it's something I don't want to do out of spite. I was not violated. I was not hurt. Just like Gepka was not violated, he was not hurt. He did this thing to make a buck, right? And for me to try to do it to make a buck, I just don't feel that it's the right way to do things. Specifically because, to directly answer your question, no, I don't think Allstate is maliciously, saying, hey, go use these overseas call centers, go violate all these TCPA and do not call regulations.
Thank you for all of that. I think it's a fantastic answer. And what I'm trying to drive home ultimately, both for the would-be litigators out there and for the plaintiffs' lawyers out there and for their apologists and enablers, they feel like they're going after Allstate. They feel like they're going after a company that's got billions of dollars and they can spare $4 million. And hey, the lawyers are going to make $1 million, $1.5 million off the deal. So they feel good. We're protecting consumers. Boom. No, you're not. The conduct is still happening, right? Allstate corporate's not doing anything on purpose to allow this. This is happening because there's overarching issues structurally in the way the lead generation industry is working. And we're going to talk about that, right? So Allstate's not to blame. It's a structural issue, right? That's the problem. The bad guys, the litigators, the plaintiffs' lawyers, who I think of as largely the bad guys in this narrative, they think it's a victimless crime what they're doing, bringing this case that really doesn't help anybody. They're just stripping a big company like Allstate out of $5 million. But what they're forgetting is that, dude, you were in the middle of this thing, right? And even though you did nothing wrong from a moral perspective, this cost you $2.5 million out of your company. I'm a small business owner, man. Trust me. You hit me for $2.5 million. I am limping. I'm eating, Wonder Bread. My employees, I have to lay them off. I can't keep the dame. She's too expensive, right? This is it's really very serious. And that's why I try to bring guys like you on so that people can see the carnage, right? It's not like, oh, some giant corporation loses $5 million. Who cares? No, man, it's a mom and pop shop. One of the best places to work in Ohio that employs 18 folks that I'm sure, these dollars are very important to you, to your family, and to these families. And for what? For what? Because the guy claimed that he revoked his consent to a different party. It's to me, it's nuts, man. It's absolutely nuts. And
unfortunately, we did have to lay off, and it's unfortunate because we had to lay off to keep the business afloat. The business was bigger than those positions, and that in itself is not the way that I like to do business, right? If the ship's going down, I'd like for the whole ship to go down together, but unfortunately, this is how I feed my family. And so we did have to lay off. We did have to change the culture. We did go from eating steak to noodles that taste like steak, is what I tell the guys, right? So ramen noodles aren't as good as those porterhouses, but it is, and it's so ironic because after I went through this whole thing saying I didn't want to be bullied, I still feel like I was bullied.
You were worse than bullied, man. You were worse than bullied. Is what went down, and that's why there's so many lawyers out there that will tell people to settle. And that's the thing with the TCPA world. The stakes are so incredibly high, and morality has nothing to do with it. Principle has nothing to do with it. Man, you can do nothing wrong, and you can go from eating porterhouses to eating ramen noodles. How many people did you have to lay off, Derek?
12.
12 people lost their jobs. 12 good American folks from Ohio lost their jobs.
And I'm gonna tell on myself because it's important as business decisions. I want to tell on myself. 12 people lost their job, and I replaced 4 of them with VAs out of the Philippines.
Well, there you go.
12 family members, fathers, head of households, women, mothers, coming out of a pandemic, leaving a secure job. All of them had been there for more than 3 years. Their jobs have been replaced by VAs in the Philippines. Now, I love my VAs. I'm not going to lie to you. I actually love my VAs. I love my support staff in the Philippines. They're excellent. They're loyal. They're fantastic. They're cheap. But when I look at a small business and the ramifications of this local economy, that's not the ideal picture,
and
right?
It wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have happened but for the lawsuit. 100%? You wouldn't have just laid these people off and gone to VAs?
Hell no, I didn't lay them off during COVID. I hired during COVID. We grew, remember? Like, hell no, I'm not going to VAs. I like my camaraderie. I like my team building.
I like my team too. All right, so we're gonna pivot off of this. I think we've told this story, and I appreciate you, Derek. You've been a great guest so far. But I want to talk about now the NPRM from the FCC. I'm not sure if you've even read this thing yet, or how steeped you are in it. But look, the commission is basically, I'm not saying that they're proposing, but they're seeking comment on potentially saying that a lead cannot exist. The consent has to be provided directly to the seller, or the supplier of the good or service, right? Here the consent would have to go directly to Allstate. Maybe not even through the authorized, third-party Allstate broker, right? It's not even clear if the captive agent could be the funnel through which a consent comes, or if the consent actually has to come just to Allstate. But bottom line, you're out of business, man. Is that right?
100% I'm out of business. There's a lot of guys who do goodness in this vertical that will be out of business. I saw that the other day. What's funny is that a buddy of mine sent me an article, and I said, "No, they've been trying to do this. I think I heard something about this last year." He said, No. Read the article." And I read the article, and I said, "Oh, so if every lead has to opt in directly, I'm out of business. There's no more aged leads. There's no more shared leads. There's no more lead brokers. There's no more lead middleman." I mean, this takes an entire sector of business out of business.
Look, you're even closer to this than I am. How many small businesses do you think get wiped out by this? Just give me an estimate.
Oh my gosh, an estimate? I mean, I can thousands, man. I mean, how many lead companies are out there? Thousands. There's thousands. I mean, I don't know if you'll be at LeadsCon or not, but
well, I'll be there. Yeah. And look, and so this is important, so I think you may know I'm the head of an organization called Reach, right? We're trying to put together standards for the lead generation industry. Many of those standards, maybe the story you've told me doesn't quite meet some of those standards, but the idea is to give breathing room to companies that want to do the right thing, give them some clear standards that you can abide by and still make a buck, right? I mean, that's what this comes down to. You want to be a lawful company that's not violating the law, that's not hurting consumers, but yet you're still doing something that's profitable, because that's how business is operated. So I just wanted to hear, I wanted people to understand when I'm telling people, guys, thousands of businesses are going to be put out of business by this NPRM. I want people to hear it from you, from someone on the street, from someone who knows it firsthand, who's literally one of the people in the crosshairs. If this goes through, I'm done, right? That's something that people need to hear about.
Yeah, man, and it's crazy because we just went through a whole bunch of punches, man, a whole 2-year round of punches to finally start to grow again, and to finally start to feel somewhat settled. And then to hear that this is right around the corner, puts me right back into pivot mode as a CEO, puts me right back into wiggle and shake mode as a CEO. And so we're looking at alternatives of what we can do to continue to make money, because at the end of the day, if this thing goes through, I'm instantly out of business. It's not even like a ramp up period. I mean, I'm done.
Well, look, man, we're out here fighting for guys like you because we know that there's a lot of good companies out there that want to do it right. Small businesses, great places to work, all throughout America, right? You know, this is a middle America impact more than it is, you know, the coastal America. And I want people to know about this, and we're going to fight for you. You know, Reach is going to be doing a comment to the FCC. I'm going to do everything in my power, you know, on TCPAWorld and through other means to advocate and to make sure that guys like you have your stories told. Because I don't want to see you guys go out of business. I don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. All right, man. Well, look, you've been a great guest. Here we are at the end of the segment. One last question for you. The same question we always ask everybody. The name of the podcast is Deserve to Win. It's, of course, the slogan over here at Troutman Firm, soon to be Troutman to Mean LLP. So from your perspective, and you can talk about other lead generators, you can talk about call centers, you can talk about you know, independent or captive agents, whoever you want to talk about. In your opinion, what can folks in this ecosystem do to deserve to win?
Just do the right thing. I think that karma is real, man. And, you know, sometimes we can get greedy in business. I have always remembered the words of my mother that said, the cost of success can sometimes be expensive. And that means just to keep doing the right thing. And when you do the right thing and you don't have to worry about who's over your shoulder, you don't have to worry about losing sleep at night, man, you deserve to win. Just do the right thing. Just work hard, grind it out, and continue to treat people well and do the right thing, and you'll deserve to win for sure, 100%.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. You've been a great guest. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks, guys.
Wow. That was an incredibly interesting interview. I think there was probably more, ironically, that came out of that interview than anything we've done to date on this show. A lot of lessons, a lot of ups and downs. I've got a bunch of thoughts, but I want to hear from everybody else first. PJ, I know that you were kind of viscerally impacted by this particular gentleman. Would love to hear your thoughts.
So I've actually felt exactly what he's feeling, where he kept saying, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I know exactly how that feels because I've been in that exact situation. One of the things I would never do is I would never tell the magistrate or the judge that, hey, I did nothing wrong. I'm going to just roll up, open another corporation, and you're not going to stop me. And if Allstate's attorneys were there too, I could see why Allstate maybe took that decision where they're like, hey, we are going to kick you to the side, because that is how a mom and pop kind of acts. You want to act like a big boy, act like a big boy, but you don't tell the judge that. Even if you truly believe that, you never, ever do that. It's not going to buy you any favors. That's not a good strategy. I don't know who his legal team was, but it definitely was not someone who I would use.
Yeah, it is fascinating. You know, when you hear someone say, you know, well, I'm just going to change my corporate form, I will declare bankruptcy, you're not going to get a penny out of me. You know, where a person feels that they haven't done anything wrong, maybe you could understand that mindset. But from the perspective of, you know, I'm somebody you just can't get to, that's like that Mike Jones guy. It just doesn't sound good. Like the impact of that is definitely negative. I agree with you, PJ. Good thoughts, man. Anything else?
You know, just because I've been there, even if you did nothing wrong, other people are still dealing with this. I'm sure Allstate, they're still dealing with it. They had to pay $4 million, but still, maybe if you guys were really playing on the same side, that you guys would have strategically like had a good strategy on fighting this thing together, and maybe it would have played out a little differently.
I think you've got a good point, PJ. Well, I appreciate the thoughts, man. Great today on the show as always. Angelica, let's throw it over to you. You look fantastic. Your hair, it's like Shakira today. I don't know, it looks fantastic. So much volume.
Shakira hair. You know, I think I kind of related to the part where he was speaking about kind of vendors. I have, you know, past experience with people coming into the corporate flow. They're wanting to work with you, or possibly, you know, employees bringing people into the corporate flow that they want to work with. And it is really hard to track down all the pieces, you know, grab all the strings and really like validate and like vet these corporations that they want to work with. But it's also important for their sometimes within their like local region, right? It's who knows who, but it's also tricky at the same time.
Well, I appreciate that, Angelica. Great contributions today. Really appreciate you. Tori, the redhead, the dame, what'd you think?
I mean, I felt bad for the guy that, he honestly believes he did nothing wrong, and then he got put into the situation. Now he's blacklisted by, he said, 2 major corporations at this point.
Lost half his revenue.
And he had
That's a high price.
Yeah, and he had to lay off all those people that he probably, knew personally. And I feel bad for the guy. That's my thought.
Okay. Decent thoughts. Good work today, Tori. Appreciate you. Of course, we'll go over to you, my new partner.
Hello, partner.
How you doing, Pooja?
Doing great.
What'd you think?
I don't have the facts to give an actual opinion, right? So I'm very skeptical of both sides. I'm skeptical of his story, and I'm skeptical of what I've heard about Allstate's operations throughout the lawsuits they've been facing. Having been on both sides, on the big corporation side, and then having been inside on the smaller side shop, there's always a story, right? You're either wrong or you're not. There's facts that are there. I know when I was on the buyer side, I would always recommend to my business partners, if there is a wrongdoer and we have facts and evidence to show that they were wrongdoing, get rid of them. However, I do know that there's stories on the other side where the little guys are trying to cooperate with the bigger clients and provide consent records and show that they have D&C policies and procedures in place, etc. I just don't know the facts here, right? So I can't make a judgment one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think that kind of segues into my thoughts here, which is, look, this is a perfect encapsulation, a microcosm, if you will, with the problem with the entire lead gen industry. Derek is not a bad guy. Mm-hmm. You can't listen to this guy and think he's the devil. He's not. He seems like a good guy, a sincere guy. He treats people right. He was trying to have a legitimate business as a small business owner, take care of people, help other small businesses to succeed. You can't say he's a bad guy. You can't say he's a spammer, a scammer, a scumbag. He should be in jail. You just can't. Those labels don't stick to this guy. But at the same time, he's not exactly a white hat either, right? I mean, that's very gray. Kind of the way he was serving as the middleman broker, buying aged lead data, trying to warm them up. Nothing wrong with that necessarily, but these are consumers who submitted a form 60 or 90 days ago. They're probably not in the market. Let's be real. They're not expecting some call from some call center in Pakistan, right? Let's be real. What value necessarily is he delivering? I'm not trying to be mean to the guy, but when you think about what the operation actually looks like from a unwanted call perspective, on the one hand, does he deliver value in terms of outreach to a consumer who might then be brought in on a cheap lead basis, right? You heard the value prop for the Allstate agency was cheapness, right? This is cheap, so you want to hear from my leads as opposed to paying for fresh leads, right? Where a consumer is more likely to know that call was expected. And this is a tension that we have now in the lead generation world. And when we think about the reach standards, right, we are against age data. So, truthfully, Reach would not condone buying 60, 90-day-old data, having a call center in Pakistan try to warm it up and then sell those leads. That's against the Reach model as well. But you see, there's so many companies like Derek, thousands, you heard him say, thousands of companies that, maybe they're not doing that exact conduct, but the fact that lead gets sold over and over again, I thought he said it so well, right? That lead got sold 5 times live, and then it's gotten sold 3 or 4 times aged. And each one of those cells is going off to a call center somewhere to make calls to this consumer, and the consumer probably has no idea that they're going to get called from 5 different companies on the front end, and then endlessly 60, 90, 120, 180 days, who knows how long it goes, right? And that's the problem. Even if a guy like Derek isn't the worst guy in the world, when you look at what his role is ultimately, it's very gray. I can't say that this guy is on the right side of right necessarily. I don't want to speak ill of my guests. I love having guests on the show. I don't like to be mean to them. I like the guy, and I am sympathetic to him because ultimately his business was torpedoed, and from a moral perspective, he didn't do anything wrong. He was operating within the bounds of the law, sounds like to me. Somebody did something unrelated to his business that led to a $2.5 million hit to his top line. I mean, that is a really hefty price to pay in a case where I'm sure that the plaintiff's lawyers weren't even thinking about the fact that they were going to be impacting a small business and costing 12 people, guys. 12 people lost their jobs because of this. this is a big deal. And this is why, from a policy perspective, the FCC's job on the NPRM is so hard, because there are literally thousands of businesses like this, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people's jobs, right? Breadwinners for their families are on the line with this NPRM. And the question is, right, something's going to get cut, because the current situation, as we talked about at the top of the show, is untenable. It cannot continue the way it is right now in the lead generation world. Something is going to have to get cut. But where is that line going to be cut, right? Where is that line going to be placed? I think the reach standards are the right place. We'll find out here soon enough. But everybody, thank you so much for joining us as always on the 11th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. We appreciate you being here. Take care.